We're talking today about integrated design and how to plan for a great HVAC system. Our company's doing a whole house remodel edition on this beautiful 1870s house, and as we've been in the planning stages, it reminded me how important it is to have a really good HVAC system designed by a third party. And so I'm here with Kimberly Llewellyn today. Kimberly is a consultant and an HVAC designer with a local company called Positive Energy. I've been working with Kimberly's firm now for about 7 or 8 years, designing the mechanical systems for my houses. And I thought I'd have a conversation with these folks, Kimberly, on what you guys do for my houses, how it's a little different from what's normal out there, and maybe hopefully help some of these folks design really good systems for their remodel or new build. So Kimberly, tell me first of all what the normal HVAC design looks like for most American houses.
Well, it starts with usually 500 square feet per ton. That's how the equipment gets picked, right? And then let's fit the ducts wherever we can fit them.
And so how is that different on our houses? You know, we're not doing just rule of thumbs. We're working with architects. We have very different houses, from this 1870s houses with 2-foot thick masonry walls to another project with a ton of glass and really some striking contemporary architecture. What does it start with at your company when you've got a set of plans from me?
Okay, Matt, so it all starts with a load calculation. We use ACA Manual J software in order to do this load calculation. And what a load calculation is an analysis of what the heating and cooling needs of your home are.
And when you're doing that load calculation, what kinds of things are you taking into effect when that calculation's done for that house?
Everything from your building assemblies, so your walls, your ceilings, your windows, the geographical location, so climatic data, as well as orientation, which direction is the building facing.
And even all those things like how thick's our insulation? Do we have exterior insulation? What's our roof type? What's the U factor on our windows and the solar heat gain coefficient? These guys get super detailed, even down to the point of measuring the square footage of the glass and which way it's facing. So that load calc, or the Manual J as it's often referred to, is super detailed and very precise from your company. What's next when that load calc's done?
So step 2 is the equipment selection, also called the Manual S, another ACA standard. So we make sure at that stage that the equipment selection is based on the needs of the home, so based on the load calculation.
And one thing I like about working with your company in particular is you're trained and certified in the 3 VRF manufacturers that I like. I've had a tendency to use Mitsubishi the most, but you can also use Daikin or LG, which makes that VRF technology I like. Or you guys can also help me select if I want to use more standard American equipment too.
That's right.
So after we select equipment, what's the next step?
So the next step is a real nuts and bolts, which is the duct design. So at that point, we actually look at the plans, we look at your trusses, we look at all the structural elements and lay out the duct design, make sure it's sized properly and that it can actually fit into the building.
That's fantastic. And then once that duct design is done, the Manual D as it's referred to, what's that final step?
So the final step is usually ignored. It's called a Manual T, and that is the selection of the grills. It's a really important step. It's the final point of contact between the air coming through your mechanical systems into the space. And so some of the things that we think about, the considerations that go into there are not just the airflows, but also the velocities, the speed, the throw, which affects the mixing of the air in the space, and the noise criteria.
Yeah, and once I get all those things from your company, now I've got a full set of drawings and specifications. I can then give that to my HVAC contractor to get a bid and know how much that system's going to cost.
That's right, and they love it, Matt. Actually, we're not, there's no competition there. We get thank yous very often because it makes their job easier.
That's fantastic. Talk to me briefly, Kimberly, about cost, because this is a different setup than the old way of just giving a set of plans to an HVAC contractor contractor and saying, how much does this heating and cooling system cost for this house? How does your company charge, or can you give me any rule of thumbs for what it might cost?
I guess if I had to estimate, it'd be somewhere around 1% of the cost of the build.
Yeah, and of course that's going to vary depending on the cost per square foot of the houses you're typically building, right? I could see that maybe varying from as little as to 0.5% for more expensive houses,
Sure.
or maybe even as much as 2% for a less expensive house for total budget. But I can't stress enough how important it is to have a company like Positive Energy doing that from a third-party standpoint, spending the time to think about it and really doing it right. Hey, last thing I want to talk to you about, Kimberly, is that intangible, which is comfort. How does an engineering firm like yours, you got some super smart minds, take a concept like comfort and turn that into the engineering for a house?
Well, we always remember that we're designing for people, Matt. And so we use a term called human factor design. And what that means to us is that we're considering not only temperature set points, but we're also making sure that the space is healthy by introducing filtered, treated outdoor air. That means we're also controlling humidity levels in the home, as well as some other factors.
Kimberly, thank you so much for joining me. So fun to talk. You and I could talk about this topic for hours, but we wanted to make the video a little short and sweet. If you are a budding HVAC geek and want to learn from Kimberly and the other professionals at Positive Energy, they have a fantastic podcast. I highly recommend that for all my architect and builder friends out there. You can find it on iTunes at the Building Science Podcast Positive Energy, and her company can be found at positiveenergy.pro. For more info on this topic too, you can also visit my blog, mattreisinger.com. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. We'll see you next time.